Every day is a red letter day when your title font is magenta. This is Fragments of Silicon.
Welcome to kind of an experimental episode of Fragments of Silicon, or that is to say, we're kind of combining two episode types because our guest for this week couldn't find a person to speak on their behalf in time for our interview deadline, so that's been rescheduled. And to fill the gap, we're going to be taking a look at a game I was sent a code for. It's called Rise of Legions. It's a multiplayer-focused RTS MOBA, which usually would mean that we would be doing a multiplayer session over it. The thing is, it's got multiplayer, but we'll explain it when we get into the actual gameplay demonstration. So in lieu of a demonstration episode, we'll be doing the far rarer Riff commentary episode. We've done it before. It's just it shows up much less than when we all play a game together.
Mm-hmm.
So that's our programming notes for the evening. So also we are doing the full set of parts. So we're going to do the news and the topic of discussion as well. It's just the interview portion that's been adjusted. So with that in mind, let us get to the news. Pennyfan, why don't you start us off? How's your rehabilitation going?
Well, actually today I stumbled a little bit and my knee is starting to hurt, so that's not great. So, yeah, I called the doctor's office and see if he wants me to use one of my other braces or what. So, yeah, and other than that, I can't think of a whole lot else going on.
In your case, no news is good news.
Yeah.
So, Twilight?
Well, it's been getting cooler, which pleases me, and that means I can open my window at night now to let the cool air in, so I don't have to have my fan on like tonight. I'm gonna set up some fall decorations today, and work's been going well, and been playing my one game for this week, and that's about it.
Okay, Galix, it's your go.
It's been pretty low-key around here, too. The number of Switch games that have been coming out that I have not picked up yet is continuing to grow, so I'm probably going to have to do something about that as soon as I have some money, but I have a car thing that hopefully shouldn't actually cost more than a little bit tomorrow. They're just checking on something they did before, but I'm not 100% sure about how that'll go, because you never can be.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, I already started playing the game that I'm reviewing this week, Legend of the Skyfish, which is pretty okay, and we'll talk about that later. And I think that's about it, really. Not that busy of a week.
I guess it's my go. Outside of dealing with the kerfuffles of the scheduling, which is always a hazard of the occupation, let's say. The weather's been changing down here as well. The nights have been getting into the 60s, but I can't switch off the AC because the day's still getting the fucking 90s. And when you have a temperature imbalance like that, it's still better to keep your AC on than turn it on and off because it costs more energy to re-cool things down.
Mm-hmm.
So You know, it, and from what I remember from the was the weather, it might have been the Weather Channel. It's like apparently we're going to be getting unseasonable warms this year. You know, oh joy.
Hmm.
You know, it's almost like the climate is changing in some fashion, and this globe-shaped object is getting warmer in some fashion. But that would just be crazy talk. Anyway, yeah, not much news this week outside of all that. Like, so merrily we shall roll along to the game portion of the broadcast, like as merrily as we can be, since Rise of Legions. That's a bit of a tongue twister. Anyway, bills itself as a Castle Siege RTS. I'm like, RTS is maybe giving Rise of Legions a little too much verisimilitude towards that end. It's a, it's like, it's not strictly like hero based, but it's closer to like a MOBA or a tower defense game than like what you would consider to be an RTS, at least the full-fledged one. Like it's very light on the units, the features, and it's designed that way. It's designed to be a very pick up and play short game, as you will see here.
Gotta love when it adjusts its resolution on me.
Right. Yeah. As mentioned, to explain the multiplayer snafu. So this game has multiplayer. Its main focus is 1v1, PvP. Also worth noting, this game is working off of a roadmap. Recently came out of early access and recently added like the 2v2 mode, which is a big reason for why I was interested in this game. What they failed to mention was the 2v2 mode is actually locked. It's not a high lock. Like you have to get to level 2?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: we didn't know how much time that would take. Us, in between unlocking that and setting up all the back end stuff, because this game doesn't use Steam Works. It's got its own independent multiplayer thingamajig where we would have to send the friend codes through that, and like I said, it was all a bit too messy to consider for a multiplayer session in this setting. If we were doing this on a Friday, that'd be a different story. But that's how that's how these things iron out. Yeah. Also, forgive me if I sound a bit unfocused this episode. This is kind of what happens when you have to do a live show and things change at the last minute. That being said, the graphical style is edging on the cartoony, but I wouldn't, I wouldn't call it like full Saturday morning either.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen other games in this style. I think we've seen. I'm trying to remember that one MOBA RTS we covered a while ago. It's like that's another consequence. You play so many games for this thing that stuff from the past gets dislodged easily.
Was that Tiny Max Verse or something like that?
I think so.
That's what I'm recalling, at least.
Yeah, I think that was the one we played. At the beginning of the year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that very much tied its aesthetic, the cartoony aesthetic, to its very design ethos, because it was like a whole bunch of figurines, or you shrunk down. It's like that kind of thing. Yeah, here it's just less of a thematic thing, and more they probably just like the art style, and also Warcraft.
Minimax Tinyverse, that's what it's called.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, it's like, and the RTS elements come from laying all the units down and gathering. There are 2 tiers of resources, and the more you attack, the more of the second resource, which you can place down for the spawner for more units. And see how quickly that match went.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's like,
I mean, far be it for me to say that quick matches are a bad thing in the RTS/MOBA genre. That is a game that the play session length is actually, I think, one of the major hurdles to, people enjoying it.
Once again, this is very proud of this, because it's built around quote-unquote short, intense 1v1 matches. At least that was in the early access stuff. Let's see. We'll get into it a bit later, but the other big facet of Rise of Legions here is going to be the deck building. That is to say, it's got a card aspect in the sense of the units. You can build a deck of unique units that you unlock from the game, and that's a lot of where the monetary stuff comes from in this game. It's like both in terms of like the in-game currency and the premium currency, but we'll get to that more when we show off the cash shop. Let me see.
So how much money are we going to make Petty Fan spend for demonstration purposes? No, I'm kidding.
I'm like, he is not spending anything. Like,
Look, I'm made of money.
Yeah. Anyway, another feature that's being touted right now, but I'm trying to remember if it's in the game, is PvE challenges.
There is.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
I think they call it like Golem Challenge or something like that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, some of these marketing blurbs are a bit out of date, because they see like 3 playable legions. It's actually up to 4 now, if I'm recalling correctly. Like I said, it's all fine. From what I've played, from what I've encountered, everything here is fine, but it really doesn't rise to the level above that. I mean, it's ostensibly free, so you don't risk anything just giving it a whirl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, with the deck building and the multiplayer, it's not bad, honestly.
Mm-hmm. It's just all a bit standard. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just there's nothing in the display here that really stands out. Like, even the art style, even the art style, the original flourishes come across as a bit derivative. That's not meant to be an insult. It's just, how do I put this? this is this is probably going to be a game I'm going to struggle to recall a few weeks down the line, let alone a few months.
Mm-hmm.
It's Putty Fan, what about you? You're the one who's actually playing the game. What are your impressions of the gameplay?
It's pretty basic.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this would be something more if I was back in high school. You know, if I had time between classes, I'd whip it out.
Phrasing.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, sometimes you have to go with that.
Hmm.
You know, and this also does make it hard to commentate because how many
Yeah.
adjectives can we throw in? How many synonyms for the word decent but average can we illuminate here? So until we get to showing off what's in the cash shop, we'll take a moment to talk about the recent state of play that happened as of this broadcast yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, in case you missed it, the latest state of play happened, and good God, Sony's not even fucking trying to hide the fact that this is the PlayStation Direct. Like, good God, even the motion graphics are the fucking Nintendo Direct graphics. You're not helping the Nintendo comparison, Sony. You're really not.
And I won.
Like,
Yeah. Try searching for your own identity as Sony.
Well, I mean, in their defense, Nintendo has proven that method of conveying news to your fans is wildly successful, and also things like E3 have kind of been less useful lately. And oh god, the plans for next year, if it goes anything like they said it might, that would be awful. So, they could do maybe a slightly more original style of it, but trying to emulate a style that works is not necessarily bad.
True.
Yeah, and so it's more, Sony is still very new to this game, and you can tell that they're a bit ahead of Microsoft, who also has their own ripoff called the Inside Xbox Show, which also happened yesterday, but you didn't notice that because nothing of actual substance came out of it. Like, apparently the most interesting thing that happened from there was close-ups of energy drinks. Not even making that up. Anyway, what happened, Sony hasn't quite figured out the rhythm and the tempo because, okay, this was basically a one game show again. That the last two state of plays have been the last one was Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I'm trying to remember what even the last one before that was. But I remember it was one game and then a whole lot of smaller stuff. The way Nintendo does it is starts off strong. You got a lot of the more smaller mid-cardy stuff in between, and then you end strong.
Mm-hmm.
I guess Sony thought they had a real humdinger in Humanity, which is the new game that's coming from Tetsuya Mizuguchi, the creator of Luminous, Rez, et al. And it's probably the most interesting game they showed off at the PlayStation experience, because I'm not exactly sure what this is. It's definitely arty, and I don't know. It might be a puzzle game. It might be an RTS. Maybe Lemmings. Like, it's unique. I'll give it that. Let's see. They showcased a deeper look at Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Like, I know everyone here could give a toss, but I mean,
They
modern.
revealed that it is, in fact, a Call of Duty game featuring Modern Warfare.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Call of Duty is Call of Duty. Like, I know more people. Yeah. I know more people. Right. Here we go. The Call of Duty series continues to be popular. That's why it keeps showing up. You know, there are people who want it to go away. I'm kind of neutral on that. Like, I don't really give a shit about Call of Duty either way. But
Yeah, same here.
Call of Duty makes a lot of fucking money. You know, it's not going to go away. It's just one of those harsh realities. Let's see. The latest game from Katamari Damacy creator Kirita Takahashi has a release date announced. It's called Wadum, and yeah, this looks like something from, you know, right at home from Katamari Damacy and Nobi Nobi Boy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's coming out in December to the PlayStation 4 and the Epic Games Store. You know, it's like, because Epic Games has a overall deal with Annapurna Interactive, the publisher. So, you know, expect that to hit Steam a year from now or a year from then.
Mm-hmm.
Year, 6 months, something like that. Yeah.
Let's see. Civilization 6 is coming to the PlayStation 4. Also announced later on for the Xbox One. I gotta admit, I don't see the appeal. Like, I saw the appeal for the Nintendo Switch because, you know, it's also on mobile devices, and Civilization makes for a pretty mean portable game as well. You know, it's like Civilization on a console.
Yeah.
I don't, like, maybe it's because I've actually played. Like, okay, I get that, you know, modern consoles have mouse and keyboard support. Like, what they don't have is mod support. And that's a thing with Civilization 6. You know, I guess good for those who want to play it on a console, but I just do not see the appeal of playing a 4X game on a console that wasn't designed for it. Let me see. Medieval has a demo out. So, you know, if you want to see what the remake of Medieval looks and plays like, you can do that on the PlayStation Network. Like, Medieval, like, I think I played the demo for that back in the day, but I don't remember ever actually playing, like, the full game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same here. I played the demo back in the PS1 days, but never did play the game itself.
And for those clamoring for an Ape Escape remaster remake, I imagine it'll probably come at some point, maybe with the PlayStation 5 at this point. I mean, the PlayStation 5 is about a year away, so I would expect development resources to have shifted to that console for anything that wasn't already far along in development or not a high priority. But that's just speculation at this point. Let me see. The Last of Us and MLB The Show got announced for this month's PlayStation with Gold. Good for them. Like, see, this is kind of one of the major announcements at State of Play. This thing would have been like a 15-second blurb in a Nintendo Direct.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Ditto announcing like the Death the Death Stranding limited edition bundle. This got a full-on trailer. Once again, Nintendo would have this as a supplication to larger information. This is the deeper shit that Sony has to fix. They need to make sure its information flows better than what they've been showing so far. I imagine they'll eventually nail it down, because I don't see the Sony state of play going away anytime soon. Anyway, the big thing was the new trailer for The Last of Us Part 2. And it's been causing some consternation. Because, okay, I guess there's no nice way of putting it. And I will grant that the game itself may not be representative of what they put in the trailer, because trailers can be fucking misleading.
Yep.
But, a lot of people are complaining about the queer baiting. That is to say, it's leaning in on the fact that Ellie's girlfriend may be dead. May have been killed by, some assholes, is what I got. Like, I'm not exactly sure who the opposing force is here.
Mm-hmm.
That may be part of the point. Like, is this a generic revenge tale? We don't know. Like, in fact, we don't know if she's even dead. But the problem is the marketing's hit all the high spots for queer baiting. It's like the trailer before this. That's the one with the lesbian kiss, if I'm recalling correctly. And now you've killed off the lesbian love interest. Now, I will grant you, it's harder for me to articulate this kind of stance. It's harder for anyone here, because none of us are, LGBT. Our LGBT members are, Kevin, who shows up in the after show, and Mac, who is currently still busy. So.
Mm-hmm.
But from what it's like, part of the reason why this is such a drag is because, first of all, it's a very, very tired trope that beckons from a horrible age. It's like, it's a message of, you're an aberration. The only way you can be happy is in death. Now, I'll grant you, The Last of Us is not exactly known as being a happy-go-lucky franchise. I don't know if you know that. Like, so, expecting, the love interest to die is not outside of the realm of possibility, but it's not really doing it in an interesting way as portrayed in the trailer. This is very much what a barrier gaze trope looks like.
Yep.
And while, once again, I can agree that, we don't know what the actual game is. I'm personally thinking this is subversion. Maybe something that Ellie imagined. By the way, on that note, I'm suspecting that the Joel that has been revealed in this trailer, he's probably a figment of Ellie's imagination. More subconscious than the actual guy showing up.
Yeah.
Once again, not confirmed, but don't be surprised if, this is all in her head. But to get back to the addressing of the, it's like, from what I've seen from queer people on Twitter and the like, another facet of the frustration is because it makes the struggle the identity. And it's also, dovetailing into other tropes regards to women in general, fridging the love interest. It's like, the only reason why I suppose it's less egregious here is because it's It's the motivating factor for a female love interest instead of a male love interest, but functionally it's pretty much the same. It's a plot device to provide pathos to the main character and little else, which is a problem in and of itself. But all that being said, the reason why it's only a minor concentration right now is because this is just a trailer. We don't know if the actual game's going to lean into it. That doesn't make what the marketing people or the editing people or whoever greenlit this okay. But it might be just a misdemeanor offense, all things considered. We won't know until February. That was the other big thing that came out of this. We know that it's coming in February.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So with that in mind, I suppose we can take a look at what we got available for purchasing.
Alrighty.
Yeah. So Petty Fan, walk them through.
So you have skins you can get for your various units. There are different icons that you can use for your profile. We got bundles of stuff, and these cost real money. There's the premium time thing that gives you 150% extra credits and experience after every match.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, go back to that. I need to do math.
Please proceed.
And then you can just buy the crystals, which are kind of the premium currency. It starts from $6 all the way up to $120. So yeah. All in all, there's nothing really game-breaking in here.
That's not much of a best value.
Yeah. Well, and the bundle also gives you...
It's not best value at all. Go back to that. It's $119.99 for 50.
Yes.
$59.99 for 25.
Yes.
$59.99 times 2 is $119.98. If you include tax, it's probably a little less, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on I don't know how it's taxed, but it's not actually the best value. 225,000 is actually a cent less than 150,000.
And yeah, there's also the bundles that you can get. It gives you bonus time, crystals, and an extra deck slot. And then it also just has the deck builder stuff in there. Like, you can get the crystals, the premium currency, like, sometimes at the end of a round, or from doing the, like, daily quest things. And yeah, that's really all there is to the cash shop. It's nothing, there's no pay to win. It's pay for cosmetics and maybe a little bit of convenience. So I guess anything else we want to see?
Not too much. I mean, I've just... I could try to crunch numbers on the other things either, but I don't know how to apply value to some of them, so,
But yeah, this is a game. You can play it.
Kind of what we've been leaning in on for the last however long we've been covering it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, there's no microtransaction sins here, really. If you don't want to get special icons, just don't put money into it.
Well, the premium time or whatever the fuck makes you level up faster or something, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
As only if you're very competitive.
Yeah, it has no pay to win, so good for them on that.
Yeah.
Not that can't be added later, but yeah.
But yeah, it's looking like the overwhelming consensus here is, this exists. If you want to play it, it's free. Investments, up to you. Anyway, Petty Fan, play us to the next segment when you can get to the controls.
Yeah.
Probably for the Link's Awakening thing. If you want to play something maybe beyond Oasis, I know it's a Genesis game, but I don't think you have the Game Boy emulator handy.
Not on me. And I have it on my 3DS, but I don't have a capture system for it, sadly.
Right. So, that's about the best analog I can think of right now to Link's Awakening or any Zelda game. Maybe something else in the Genesis collection, but you get my point.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there is what was it called?
I think you have Blossom Tales. I don't know if it's installed.
That's what I was trying to think of. Yeah, Blossom Tales. That's Link's Awakening.
Blossom Tales can work. Really some sort of Zelda game.
Yeah.
Zelda game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'm almost done. Yeah, these matches do go by fairly fast.
Sorry for the awkward pauses and the dead air. This is what happens when you do it live.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We can't make this vanish.
Yeah, sadly.
But do bear with us. Plus, nobody here likes doing editing, so.
Maybe one day I'll have a computer that won't take 8 hours to render a video.
Like, why bother when we can just, have the live session and, everything's recorded, good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, that's got its problems, but once again, nobody here has to bother with, you got to make sure this audio is like this and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's more complicated than what probably some people would think.
Let's see. Yeah, I suppose in a preview of the post show, that's probably where the real fireworks. Maybe not fireworks, because I don't think anyone here is going to be shouting at each other.
Yeah.
Or anything like that. It's just, there's been a lot of news. Most weeks it's a struggle to figure out where to start. This week we know exactly where to start.
Yeah. If you pay attention to politics, you know where it's going to.
You don't even have politics to,
Be on Twitter in the last 12 hours.
or news outlets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm ready to switch over.
Yeah, apologies for that. All right. Welcome to the topic of discussion. This is probably going to be the most focused part of the episode because we know what we're talking about, and I think everyone here has played Link's Awakening, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
One of my first Game Boy games.
Neat. Right, so we are talking about The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. We've probably talked about this game in the past, but it's been long enough where I can't remember not only where, but with whom.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this could have been, when Nock and Ogre were part of the cast. that long ago. But, obviously we are talking about Link's Awakening because the remake has just released a couple of days ago.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anyone here has secured the remake yet. That's one of the games that the Galax is trying to figure out when to buy. But
Yep.
from what I've read, in terms of content, it's the same game basically. It's all the same dungeons, it's all the same, it's all the same everything you remember from the Game Boy or Game Boy, really the Game Boy Color game. Except I think the stamps might not be in this one.
Yeah, they took out the Dompe's house is where the photographer Mouse's house was. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Dompe's the chamber dungeons are the big addition. Apparently, this is basically the proof of concept for Zelda Maker. Maybe the closest we get to that, because making a Zelda dungeon isn't exactly like making a Mario level. I know.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens on that regard. But making a chamber dungeon is basically taking all the Link's Awakening elements and putting them together. From what I've heard, it's a decent mode. It's not as robust as something you'd get like from a standalone experience, but it gets its point across. Like the biggest thing I've heard out of the remake that is a detriment is the frame rate.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, this game is having frame rate issues up the ass.
Yeah, from what I've seen on the Let's Plays I've watched so far, it has this thing where away from the center of the screen, the screen gets blurry, which makes sense for plot reasons. And that is fairly intensive, apparently. Pettyfan tried putting it on 2 lines or something.
I think the definitive statement on that I saw was someone on Twitter saying it's got the artistic sensibilities of a Game Boy Color game. It's got the frame rate of an N64 game. Yeah, which is troubling.
Yeah.
It's not always bad, but it's sometimes bad.
No, but you wouldn't expect a game like this to be that taxing for the Switch.
Yeah.
But apparently it is. And like outside of the frame rate issue, it's pretty pitch perfect in terms of remaking the classic game.
Mm-hmm. They even added the Keller dungeon from Link's Awakening DX.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it really does invoke the memory of the Game Boy Color game because it's got the Game Boy Color scheme going on there. The Game Boy Color couldn't display that many colors, so it used very vibrant expressions in its color aesthetic. And that's coupled with this very unique art style. I hesitate to call it like claymation, like say Kirby and the Rainbow Curse. It's more Playmobil style. If anyone knows what a Playmobil figure looks like.
Or just like actual little wooden figures.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not quite Lego either. More maybe Duplo. And apparently the remake is so faithful. It's got the 8-way direction instead of full 360-degree movement because they've said that the reason why they stuck with the 8-way is because the way the game is actually designed was designed around that. they would have had to actually change the game to change that. And I can buy that because...
Well, yeah, there are a lot of really tricky, like, angled jumps and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Link's Awakening, this is a game that actually introduced jumping into Zelda.
Yep.
You know, because... And I remember that actually being quite a big deal at the time. Because, you know, you could jump in Zelda 2, but that was the side-scrolling game. That didn't count.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, honestly, not jumping is a more interesting thing mechanically in side-scrollers.
It's worth noting that the original Legend of Zelda did actually have side-scrolling segments, but they were all very short one-room affairs with a ladder, some bats, a ladder, and an item.
And they still basically played top-down.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Yeah, you couldn't fall because there was always a ladder whenever there was a... It was literally a cheat. It still used the same top-down engine structure and stuff. The only things that it required was the ladder texture in 2 places and then a bunch of black space that was not actually coded to be walk-onable.
Yep. And that's also correlates to this game because this actually has proper side view segments. You know, probably a bleed-in from all the Mario shit that they borrowed.
Yeah, which is why the jump is the first power-up you get in the game also. Because it's necessary for traversing almost all of the side-scrolling segments.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And another neat touch that the remake has done, they've got the off-kilter Goombas in the game. You know, the Goombas that smiled.
Mm-hmm.
It's like in the reveal trailer, they were just regular-ass Goombas, but now they're the smiling Goombas. It's like, indeed, all the cameos are still there. Dr. Wright's still there. The Yoshi doll, Princess Peach. She was the picture.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the anti-Kirby. You know, Kirby is technically not in the game. The enemy that is based off of Kirby is called the anti-Kirby.
But it looks pretty much the same as Kirby.
Well, it's Kirby, but evil. So obviously it's not Kirby. He's the anti-Kirby. You know, which means they got to make the anti-Kirby in Kirby at some point for that to be canonical. It's more... This is more the legally distinct substitute than the actual real deal.
Mm-hmm.
It was, you know, it was closer in the Game Boy game because remember, Black and White, that Kirby was white, the same color as, you know, Game Boy Kirby. I'm trying to remember if he was pink in the Game Boy Color, because if I'm remembering correctly, he's brown now to really have the distinction. Anyway, the Link's Awakening game is considered to be one of the greatest Game Boy games ever, if not the greatest. Not something I dispute. I know I played a shitload of it back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's the bridge between The Link to the Past and Ocarina of Time in some weird ways. That is to say, this is the first Zelda game that really emphasized characters over
The exploration.
I hesitate to say story because there's not really a Zelda game out there that emphasizes story all that much.
Mm-hmm.
But like NPCs with character, even Link to the Past did not have that many NPCs with like individual personalities. It was mostly just sage or villager,
Mm-hmm.
who usually yells to the guards in the early game and then is gone later.
Yeah.
The closest thing you get is like the bottle guy.
Yeah. And that's stuff that's been confirmed to have bled into Ocarina of Time. Even though I'd say that in terms of character, this is the world's warm-up deck for Majora's Mask.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It's-
well,
it's-
in Ocarina of Time had a few quirky characters, especially in the Trading Quest, which also started in Link's Awakening.
Right.
But Majora's Mask is the one that really said, okay, so we have all of these characters. Now let's give all of them daily schedules, and you have to help each of them with a problem.
Right. And and like Majora's Mask, Link's Awakening is actually a sequel. This may have been changed later on, but like back when this game was new, it was billed as a direct sequel to Link to the Past. It is Link to the Past, Link leaving Hyrule for a training exercise. In case
Because Hyrule is boring with Ganon gone.
Yeah, well, it's more in case Ganon or a new evil comes around. You know,
I am not sure if it is still in that position in the timeline, in the official timeline, but that's what it
Right.
was when it was made, and that's what matters.
yeah, that's what I'm looking at. I'm pretty sure that's been changed, especially since we got an actual, not direct sequel, but we got Link to the Past 2 in Link Between Worlds.
Yeah, the Oracle of Ages and Seasons is between.
No, that
pasts and-
was a distant sequel, though. Link Between Worlds is far later.
Yes, like this is still supposed to be Link to the Past Link, and outside of that, there's no connection to anything we typically associate with Zelda, or at least at the time. Characters like Marin and Terran, they have become recurring elements in the Zelda series.
Mm-hmm.
And they got their start here. But at the time, everything here was brand new. Outside of Link and various enemies. Like Octorok show up and Tektites.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe some other.
A lot of the standard enemies show up. Although this is also, I think, the first time that a Moblin has a non-grumble speaking lines.
No. In the original Zelda, he's the guy who said.
He's the secret.
You're thinking of the Gorilla.
Probably, yeah.
Mike. But anyway, yeah. And there were some other elements like Turtle Rock's making a reappearance. Moldorm is back as a boss. Like the way you
it started as a fan project to port, like a fan inside Nintendo project to port Link to the Past to the Game Boy.
Yeah, it was originally supposed to be a Link to the Past on Game Boy, but it became its own thing. This would happen again with Oracle of Seasons. That was supposed to be a full-on remake of the original Legend of Zelda for the Game Boy Color, and they made it an original thing. But more on that in case they do a remake of the Oracle games, which could be on the menu.
Yeah, but they'd have to do with Capcom for that as well.
That is true.
Possibly, but what Capcom did is they created the scenario. I honestly don't know how that works. It's like that could be a rights issue thing, because collaborations often are. But if they're doing a remake, they don't have to worry about code. It's really like if if Capcom owns like the Oracle versions of like Nehru and Din,
which is fairly unlikely.
Yeah, because that is building upon pre-established conceptions in the Zelda universe. But once again, that's kind of a talk for in case we have to talk about Oracle remakes.
I guess I checked the timeline, and they are all still after. It is still Link to the Past, then the Oracle games, then Link's Awakening, all potentially with the same Link. I wasn't sure about that. Some of the speculative timelines that I read before they released the official one did not even have them next to each other.
No surprise.
Anyway, Now, in terms of whether or not Link's Awakening should have been remade, um, that doesn't seem to be a question that's been a great cause of concern. Like,
Yeah, on one hand, did it actually need it? Not so much. The original still holds up really well. Did it benefit from it? Yes.
arguable in that case because they messed up the frame rate bad enough where you could make a case for playing the original version.
Counterpoint: you no longer get two text boxes every time you walk into a stone without the power glove equipped.
Right, but I was about to say that ignores the modernization because while it's still like 8-way directional movement, you aren't limited to 2 fucking buttons. So you can have sword and shield at all fucking times.
You can have the sword and shield and the power glove when you get it, and the Pegasus boots when you get it at all times.
Right. It's those were only taken out of Link's Awakening because they only had 2 buttons to work with.
Right.
And
well, the Pegasus boots require activation.
Mm-hmm.
You can pick up things without the power bracelet, so they probably could have made that just a power up you get. But having to juggle your equipment slots was part of the puzzle-ish setup that they went with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, they only did that because the limitations of the original Game Boy and Game Boy Color.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I guess it was nice that you could come up with theoretical combinations of items, but it's...
The biggest flaw with that is, well, I guess technically in the original one, throwing bombs was almost a combo because you had to use your hands to throw them. But again, I think you didn't need the power glove to do that.
No, what was an actual combo were the bomb arrows.
Yeah,
yeah, the bomb arrows. But what I was getting to is that it's slightly disappointing that there weren't more things like the bomb arrows.
Right. Like
that you can't make like magic powder bombs that do magic powder over a bigger area, or I don't know.
Yeah, they did not take advantage of the combinations. Like really, the long jump was the only thing I could really think of.
Oh yeah, that's a point.
Yeah.
The detriment was all of the opening and closing of the inventory you had to do.
Yeah, it got to be a pain.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
And also, you pretty much didn't use the shield except when there was a specific entry because for traversal, you pretty much always wanted to have the sword and, well, you wanted to have in order the gloves, the jump, the boots, or the sword. There was rarely a time, except when you're specifically fighting enemies that you have to flip over, that you really want to have the shield equipped.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I'm like, yeah, and in terms of like gameplay, it is a Zelda game on a Game Boy, and it's a proper Zelda as well. Like, it feels like a Zelda game in spite of all the weird additions, and that's kind of important because the Super Mario Land games.
Yeah, with the graphical limitations it was facing, they did a really good job of getting the like aesthetic of Link to the Past.
Yeah.
Like that's no small feat. Like, yeah, the actual gameplay is a bit primitive compared to Link to the Past, but it's the Game Boy versus the Super NES. Like, they did have to make limitations, like bringing back the scrolling screens from Zelda 1. And now that it's no longer confined to the Game Boy hardware, they can get rid of that shit.
That said, the original game handled the scrolling screens really well, in that like each one was somewhat distinctive in terms of what was on it.
Yeah.
And even the new one still does it in dungeons. Even when there are rooms that are bigger, I believe it still does it one by one rooms.
That's probably due to the dungeon design.
Maybe not in the Eagle. There are a couple of rooms that have more than a one space doorway between rooms, but not many.
Like, and in terms of items, it's pretty standard stuff. Really, the standout was the Rock's Feather.
Mm-hmm.
Like
The Rock's Feather. This is the game that it's not the game that introduced the hook shot, but it's certainly the game that codified the hook shot as, yeah, this is not a one-off. We're doing this.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and probably took the magic powder to the next level. But
Actually, this is also the game that really went somewhere with the second game that did stuff with like lifting stuff and used it significantly more for puzzles. This game does more with picking stuff up and throwing it than was ever required in Link to the Past.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'd say this is a bit more puzzle oriented than Link to the Past. Probably once again because of the Game Boy design, but that's not something I could confirm. Just overall items are okay, but really the Capcom Zelda games took items to not just the next level, but arguably some of the best items in all of Zelda came out of those games.
Yeah, the seed shooter, whichever item you got for shooting seeds, because they both developed that differently. The switch hook and magnetic gloves,
Mhm.
Let's see, you do get flippers don't you?
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Anyway, once again, Link's, in a nutshell, Link's Awakening is a fantastic Zelda game. And while it may not necessarily needed a remake, no one's really complaining about it either. It's like, I think that, like, this was a better candidate than, say, Link to the Past. I think like remaking the Super NES games would come with a lot more in the way of anger.
Yeah.
I don't know if they remade Link to the Past in this like a similar engine to Link Between Worlds. I think that would probably work.
Well, I think it's more of a question of what would be added to a Link to the Past remake in this style, because once again,
yeah, not much.
Yeah, it's like you can justify this version because they didn't add a ton of stuff, but it's got legit quality of life enhancements.
I think the only thing they actually really added are the like bottles for fairies, which there were fairies, but you couldn't carry them around.
Yeah, I think I remember that. But it's like I'm struggling to think of anything that could be added to the Link to the Past.
I think they did a good job of porting the music for this too, because Link's Awakening had great music.
Yeah, it's updated music with actual instrumentation this time around, which you would expect from like the Nintendo Switch.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm talking about a Link to the Past is anything that wouldn't be obvious or subjective, like you can't, like, it's hard to say that the music has gotten objectively better in terms of taste. In terms of technology, sure.
Yeah.
There are people who would probably prefer the chiptune tracks. And I'm willing to bet that goes for that go like triple for the Link to the Past stuff. But
it would have been great if they could have managed to make it be able to switch to the old music.
And or old visuals too for anyone who wants that.
Yeah, they probably didn't want the virtual console version to go out of style.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
It's like I know that's not on the Nintendo Switch, but why have that for free when you can charge what, $5-7 for it?
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose lastly we should end on the developer of the Link's Awakening remake, which is Grezzo. So for those who don't know who Grezzo is, they're the ones who did the Luigi's Mansion remake, and their previous Zelda experience is doing the remakes of the 3D Zelda games for the 3DS.
Which met with mostly okay, but slightly mixed.
Like, that's probably stuff that was above their heads. Sure, any changes that were done at Nintendo's behest. They also did an original 3DS RPG called Ever Oasis, which is, from indicators, pretty good.
I have that, and I keep meaning to play more of it. But I just don't bring my 3DS places anymore.
Yeah, the Switch has kind of killed that. And yeah, I'm like, Link's Awakening, still an amazing game all these years later. All right, so that'll about do it for this installment of Fragments Silicon. Oh, jeez, I hate it when my notes aren't out. I had to do a reset. Hang on. Anyway, no Friday show this week. So, once again, neither evening or morning. And as far as how the rescheduling went, the guest this week is going to open up season 12. So, good news for that. Let's see. Here we go. On the Sunday reviews, we've got 4 of them. Let's see. I'm going to be covering Ramify, which is a puzzle game. It's basically a version of Lights Out. You know, that game where you hit switches and things get turned off?
Where it changes the one and also the ones adjacent to it.
Yeah, it's a twist on that though. Like you hit like a square. I'm not exactly sure what these things are, and it'll fire these dots out. You got to inflate them so that about 4 times, so that the projectiles will inflate other ones, and your job is to get rid of all of the blocks in a certain amount of moves. This is probably a game that's going to help have a visual representation for it. Also worth noting, there is a free demo of the game. So, let's see, Sin Slayers, which is it's a light RPG. That is to say, it's an RPG, but it's a really cut down version of it. Once again, it's something that'll be articulated more in the review, and it'll help to have the visuals. But it's basically, you do a lot of RPG stuff, but it's limited in that regard. Also a bit of a roguelike because it's got the randomly generated dungeons. More on that on Sunday. Let's see. Galaxy's Nintendo Switch review of the week is going to be Legend of the Skyfish,
which wants to be similar to Zelda, but doesn't. It's still an overhead thing. You still whack enemies. The gimmick is that you have a fishing rod that you can use to pull things to you or pull you to things sometimes. It doesn't quite nail it, though. It's a little bit slower and more linear than most top-down Zelda games. So.
And finally, Twilight will be handling a game called Death's Crown. Or is it Death Crown?
Death Crown.
Yeah, Death Crown.
Surprisingly much more fun than I expected. Simple RTS.
Well, more on that on Sunday. So until then, I shall wish you good gaming.